Welcome to Satsang. So beautiful to be together and to be in the sacred garden. We'll start with a question that's come in from our global family from all over the world who join us via technology. Send in questions in advance. We'll start with one of those and then open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. Is there such a thing as perfect? Yeah, there's absolutely such a thing as perfect. In fact, if we change how we think, we can see almost everything as perfect. Then there's very, very few things that are imperfect. I mean, on a supreme level, where we say there's nothing but God, on that level, everything else is an illusion, there's only God. On that level, everything is perfect. But when we come down to the human level, the level where we're really here in human bodies, having a human experience, there's some things that are not perfect. Hunger, poverty, oppression, environmental destruction. We could come up with a nice handful of things that we could say really are not perfect. But almost everything else, if we just change how we think, then everything can be perfect. The only thing that makes me think that things are not perfect is how I look at it. I mean, how many people, when you look in the mirror, say, perfect, right? Everybody's got at least one thing. Too fat, too skinny, too tall, too short, too old, too young, too this, too that, not enough this, not enough that. And yet, with a simple shift in focus, we would look in the mirror and say, oh my God, perfect. And it is, regardless of the size or shape or color. It's utterly perfect. I mean, this creation is just extraordinary. What it can do, how it functions. I mean, it really is just a masterpiece. But we get lost in, it's a little bit too much this shade or that shade, or this shape or that shape. But actually, it's perfect. So, I think there's a lot of things that are perfect. But we have to allow ourselves to see them like that. And I would begin with nature. Right? If you're one of those people where nothing is perfect, nothing is even right, begin with sunsets, sunrises, waves on the ocean, the stars in the sky, a flower blooming. Things that are really easy to understand or perfect. But then as you look at them, realize, well, So this beautiful rose flower that's blooming over here is a little bit smaller than the rose that's blooming over there. And actually she's missing one of her petals. And the other petal seems to have gotten a little dried in the sun. But she's still perfect. Yes, we can notice she's of smaller size. Yes, we can notice that there's a little part that's dry. But we would never say this isn't a perfect flower. Of course it's perfect. And then you think, well, what if that rose flower had my mind and started saying, oh God, look at this. So unfair. Like, why does the sun shine on me in such a way that I get all dry and shriveled? And this one right next to me is so plump and soft and moist, dewy, right? And you laugh, right? We all smile, we chuckle, because we think, oh, that would be a very silly rose flower. But that's actually what we do when we look at ourselves and when we look at our lives. We look at other people and we think, oh, if I just had that, it would be perfect. If I just had that, it would be perfect. But the truth is, if you actually spoke to those people honestly, and they were honest with you, or you had some really pure, perfect vision into their lives, you'd realize that they're looking at somebody else going, oh, if I had that, it would be perfect. I did this experiment, actually, personally. When I had been in India about a year or two, I was back in Los Angeles and visiting. And I had already seen such an extraordinary magic here, of such joy. Especially amongst people who seemed to have nothing. But there was just such joy. And having grown up with people who had everything, I was so touched. But I thought, I'm a scientist at heart, and I thought, well, maybe you've got, observer bias going on here. Let's actually conduct an experiment. And when I got back to Los Angeles, I spoke to a handful of people I knew, all of whom I knew personally and most of whom I knew well. Each of whom was at the very top of their particular ladder. So someone who was a CEO of a $1 billion, Forbes list company. Someone who was a tenured professor at Stanford. Someone who was a famous Hollywood actress. Someone who was a singer and her songs were in the top 10 on the radio. Someone who was a sports star. So all these different areas, but everyone had reached the absolute height. And I spoke to each of them, and of course, I didn't tell them I was doing a scientific study, because then you lose it. But I just spoke to them like chatty. Hey, how are you? I've been in India. How's everything going? And in the midst of that conversation, I asked them my real question, which was, are you happy? And what I got from every one of them was one of two answers. There were only two types of answers. Either, I will be happy when, and they each had something else that filled in that blank, but I will be happy when the kids grow up and move out of the house. I finally can squeeze back into the skirt I wore before the holidays. I finally get the raise or promotion I've been looking for. Or the second option was, I would be happy if. And again, they filled in the blank differently. I could lose that weight. My husband would work less. The kids would clean their room. Whatever it was. But every single one of them was still one thing away from happiness. Even though they had achieved everything. And that study has stayed with me all of these years because it was for me the most perfect evidence that no matter what you have, if in your mind it's not perfect, you won't be happy. And that no matter what you have, you're not any closer to being or feeling like you have perfection. That even those who everyone else would say, yeah, you put me in his shoes, it will be perfect. I mean, if we took a vote of people and said, okay, here's 8-10 people's lives you could swap for your own, most people would. Yeah, this success, this, yeah. But the truth is, those people were still one thing away from happiness. And so it's all in our minds, how we look at our lives. Now, when we talk about perfect, though, and everything being perfect, or most things being perfect, it's important that we distinguish that from what we call perfectionism. Because if we say that things are perfect or can be perfect, then that inspires a lot of people to say, okay, what that means is I have to make it perfect. If we say there's no such thing as perfect, well then, chalo tika, I've done my best and that's good enough. But if we say there is such a thing as perfect, then what a lot of us start to think is, well, it means I have to find that perfection. I have to do better so that I am doing perfect. No. Perfect never comes. Never ever comes because you have decided that you have to be perfect. Because even though the thing you're doing, you may have created it perfectly. A perfect meal, a perfect project, a perfect report, perfect balancing of your checkbook, whatever you may be doing, even though that may have become perfect. Well, you are not perfect now because you are so stressed and so upset, and you've become so fixated on being perfect that you've lost the perfect ability to love yourself as you are. And so perfection is not something to be manifested. It's something to be realized. That's a really important distinction. I'll say that again. Perfection is not something to be manifested or created. I'm not going to create perfection. I'm going to realize the perfection of that which is. Because otherwise perfectionism becomes its own pathology. And from psychology we know that it's actually a defense mechanism. I'm going to push things away, myself away, by trying to be perfect. I will get so fixated on what I'm doing, has to be perfect, that it's going to keep me from actually feeling the feelings inside me. So that push yourself to your limit perfectionism is something actually to be careful of. All we are called upon to do in our incarnation as humans is to be sincere. That whatever we do, to do it with sincerity, with the fullness of our abilities. That which has been created is already perfect. And for us to recognize the perfection, even in the midst of learning more, getting better. Because perfect, of course, doesn't mean complacent. recognizing that everything is perfect doesn't mean I become complacent and lazy. And there's that beautiful spiritual seeming paradox, but it's not a paradox, it's just an opportunity for an expanded vision where we say everything is perfect, exactly as it's supposed to be. And there's a lot of work to do. And being able to hold both of those experiences, knowing everything's exactly as God created it, exactly perfect, and in that perfection is our intelligence, compassion, initiative, creativity that makes us see the world and say, I have to work for this, work for that, do this. So we realize and recognize perfection as that which already exists, as I said, in almost every circumstance. On the highest supreme level, everything is perfect. On our human level, aside from, a handful of issues that we face, right? War, violence, hunger, poverty, as I was saying, oppression. But, there's probably not more than a dozen of them. 10, 12, 15 maximum. And they're not things that most of us face in our daily life either. Most of us are blessed enough. Most of us here, most of us watching it. We're not faced with hunger. We're not faced with oppression. We're not faced with human rights abuses. We're not faced yet with the impact of climate change. So for most of us, we actually can move through our day with realizing everything is perfect. But then, of course, as our responsibility as part of humanity, we see that which is ailing others, afflicting others, and we know that part of the perfection of who we are is to work for that. But yeah, recognizing the perfection of you and of your life and of every minute and every moment and every breath is one of the greatest and most powerful ways to actually awaken spiritually. But even if that's not what you're looking for, it's probably the best and most powerful way to find joy and peace in your life. If anyone here has any questions, I would be happy to take them. Yes, sure. He'll just give you the microphone.
Excuse me if my question is too long, because I need to give you a backdrop of it. Okay, why this question I'm asking?
Doesn't matter. Actually, you know what? Here's the thing. Your question very likely is a question that other people have.
Exactly.
You don't have to explain yourself or defend yourself. Don't worry about it. Just whatever the question is, it's going to be something other people are facing, even though they may have a different background.
Okay. That means I'm permitted.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. I always say there's no such thing as a wrong question.
Right.
Yeah.
Yesterday was the first day I heard your this thing on YouTube. and I was so impressed. Today I'm over here. But one thing which I always think and disturbs me, because I have been reading a lot of literatures. When we get answered, every ready-made answer to some of the very core questions, what I heard yesterday in your discourse or in your question answer session, like is God real? That's a big question.
Yes.
And when we hear answer to these questions, as a seeker, you need to undergo the process. Everyone who has gone through that process. Like how we do in mathematics. We have questions, and in the end there's an answer. The child who doesn't know the process, even after knowing the answer, it is of no help to them. How good it is.
Great question.
Is it?
Yeah, I understand.
Won't it be more detrimental if we give a ready-made answer that we are souls? Yes, we have been reading it from ages that we are a soul. But have we realized it? How many? There may be few exceptions like you, some more people who have realized it.
Beautiful. So the real transformation can only come when you experience it. And I always tell people this, when you listen to more and more of the satsangs, you'll hear that. I always say, I can tell you that you are the soul. But ultimately, that's not going to change anything for you until you experience it. Yesterday, the question was asked by a very sweet 9-year-old child. So there's a way that one responds to a beautiful child with questions, such that they don't feel wrong for having asked it. But absolutely, all of the literature, all of the discourses, the lectures, these are, as we say, fingers pointing to the truth. And that's why satsang, the word literally means in the presence of truth. It doesn't mean the answers to all your questions. And the power of the presence of truth is that we experience it. That's what the point of satsang is it's not supposed to be about a philosophical thing. And very frequently, when you listen to more or come more frequently, I hope, you'll see a lot of times people will ask very esoteric, sort of philosophical types of questions. And my response always is, I can do that with you, but that's not really of any benefit. You knowing the difference between this word and that word that seem the same, it's a philosophical issue, it's a semantic issue. There's plenty of courses and classes and books and dictionaries and etymologies and whatnot. But in satsang, it's actually supposed to be about that which enables you to experience the truth. And so the answers to the questions are of benefit if I can use that answer to experience my life differently. So if I learn, I am soul. Like he learned, it took him a while, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful to watch him get it. He was so smart. In just a few minutes, he really, really got it. Now, when he thinks about himself, when he thinks, who is Arsh? He's no longer ever in his life, I don't think, going to identify himself based on his body, based on his relationships. Somewhere in his mind, it's always going to be there. Oh, wait, I'm not that. And that becomes the experience. But if you come in just with what's the philosophical answer to my question, then you're absolutely right. It's not going to change you. But if you can use it to allow yourself to change, and whether it's changing because I understand, even I've read it before, I've heard it before, I know it, but maybe now I was able to actually feel it, to actually realize it. Whether it's questions like that about the soul, or whether it's how do we navigate our relationships and our in-laws and our marriage, whatever sorts of questions arise, because they all arise. The ultimate goal is that the experience of the person who asked, but also of everybody, of all of us, including me, that experience changes. The internal experience changes. And when our internal experience changes, then we are different, and then we live differently. And then our whole life changes. And that's why it's in the presence of truth. That's why it's not me sitting here as a teacher telling you things. I did that for a year in between my undergraduate degree and my PhD degree. I was a teacher for a year. It was fun. But it wasn't something that I would have gone back to and done forever. Being here and being in satsang is very different than teaching a class. Number one, because the goal is not to get people to memorize things. So many people, we all know them, have read a lot, have learned a lot, have memorized a lot. They give a lot of great answers, great discourses. And personally, they are miserable. Miserable. Right? How many people do we know who can recite shloka after shloka? But you walk into their home, you see their relationships in the home, you see how they live, and you think, my God, right? Agar ye adhyatmata hai, to mujhe usse dur dena hai. Because they're not living it. They're just speaking it. So this is not about memorize facts. I never will say to people, okay, so today we're going to learn. It's never about that. You want to learn those things? You've got so much. I mean, there's so many classes these days. You can learn everything online. Satsang is about, can you actually learn something that's going to change your experience? Can you have a different awareness, a different realization about yourself? And that's why we call it satsang rather than a class. We are together, all of us. It's not me giving you answers. I always say it's not my knowledge. I have been incredibly blessed to be able to serve as an instrument for that which needs to be spoken. But I feel very much like this microphone. You know, no one would ever say, oh wow, that great talk that microphone gave. We understand the microphone's just an instrument. And in the same way, I actually feel very much like an instrument. I'm very aware. It's not about my knowledge. It's about me getting out of the way, my ego, my identity, my sense of self, getting out of the way enough such that whatever is meant to flow can flow. And then together, all of us are in this presence of truth. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's not about just trying to get an answer to appease your brain or appease the mind. It's actually about getting an answer that's going to change you. And that's up to you. It can happen when you read a book. It can happen when you're listening to a talk online. It can happen when you're sitting in a katha. It can happen in satsang. It can happen sitting on a bus. There's no rule about when your awareness is going to happen. It's up to you of when are you going to actually allow those truths to become your truth. Today you've heard it again. Maybe today will be the day. If not, maybe we'll talk about it again tomorrow. That'll be the day. But it's up to you to decide. When am I going to stop listening just with my brain and my ears? When am I going to stop thinking about what my next question is, or what my response is, or what my argument to that is, or my reaction to that is? And actually allow that experience to happen for you. And that's the invitation. Yeah. Beautiful. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah, sure.
So in our daily lives, we deal with so many different people continuously. And sometimes they can be very difficult people, difficult situations. And they can draw you in, because if you don't participate, you're blocking your kind of opportunity to proceed forward on the journey. How do you deal with these situations, and how do you keep yourself pure?
Now, when you say these situations that draw you in, but that you need them in order to proceed, do you mean situations then in terms of like your career? Those are the types of situations you're talking? So spirituality has never said, thou shalt not engage in the world. Thou shalt not do your duty, do it well. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita is the perfect scripture on this. Gita Jayanti is coming up in a couple of days. We'll celebrate the Bhagavad Gita. It's the core scripture on your spirituality is supposed to happen while you are engaged. Not in running away from it, but in being engaged. And the key, as you say, they draw you in, is for you to be very clear about which part of you gets drawn in. So our actions have to. Our hands, our arms, our legs. Even parts of our brain, we have to put our mind on something. But that truth of who we are doesn't have to get drawn in. My favorite way of thinking about this is you think about actors and actresses, okay? Who their job is to play a role. Now, in order to play their role well, they have to be fully into it, right? I mean, really fully into it. And there's all kinds of techniques that they use to really, really get into it. And yet, even in the midst of the best scene they've ever done, the best acting, they always remember who they are. And if you doubt that, Think about being on Broadway or in some very big theater, and the star of the show in the midst of the most powerful scene. But suddenly in the front row, their husband, wife, mother, father, child, who had come to see the play, shouts to them and then collapses on the floor. Help, mom, or whatever, and then collapses. You think she's going to finish the scene? Of course not, right? She's going to jump off the stage. Doesn't matter, thousands of people. Could be at the most fancy theater in the world. She is going to jump off the stage to see what has happened. So even in the midst of playing that role perfectly, beautifully, fully, on the deepest level, she knows, I'm not actually this role, I'm actually this one's mom. And she's so aware of it that she doesn't miss a beat. The minute that that yell came, she's there. It's not like it took her a few minutes to be like, oh, wait, let me remember who I am here. And you never, ever, ever hear the story of some actor who plays a villain in a movie or a TV show or a theater program going home and killing his family because he forgot it was only a role. Never happens. And to me, I love that example because it feels like this is how we are supposed to do life. You get pulled in, we play our roles. Again, Lord Krishna makes it so clear. Stand up, play your role, play it fully, sincerely. Do your absolute best. But don't forget who you are. Don't let that mask get literally stuck to your face so that you think that that is your face. Don't be the very first actor who goes home and kills his family because he's playing a villain in the movie. Remember who you are. So as you get pulled in to your job, to that drama, it's wonderful. Play the role fully. But just remember it's a drama. And you're doing it and you're playing it. I'm a very visual person, and for me, there's a very powerful ritual that I'll share with you, and I recommend it. It's a ritual whereby in the morning, when you get up, if you have a meditation practice, do this right at the end of your meditation practice. If you don't have a meditation practice, I won't take too much of your time, but add 5 minutes, 3 minutes. Add a practice in which you take a moment and you simply connect just for a moment. And if you refuse to sit for meditation, do it in the shower. Connect for a moment with who you really are, that core inside of you, that depth inside of you. And then visualize yourself putting on. I like to think of a wetsuit. And I like to think of a wetsuit. You could think of it as just a costume, but I like to think of it as a wetsuit because a wetsuit is a really amazing invention. It doesn't actually keep the body dry, right? It's what people wear when they go swimming in the ocean or scuba diving. It doesn't keep the body dry. What it does is, when you put it on and you first go in, it allows this much water in, just this much, that your body temperature, your body heat, your Shakti, heats that water. Because our bodies are warm. Your body heat heats that very, very, very thin layer of water. So then when you go into the depth of the ocean that's cold, your inner experience inside that wetsuit is of warm water. Right? It's not about warming the ocean. You've just got to warm that little bit of water such that your experience, even in the midst of a freezing ocean, is of warm water. And so I like to think of it as zipping up a wetsuit and then allowing that truth of who you are to just kind of permeate into the suit. That love, that joy, that peace, that awareness. And then you go into the world. You move through the world and you do your thing and you do it well. But as you've been moving through the world, you've been moving through it in your wetsuit, so that your personal experience, even in the midst of negativity, in the midst of competition, in the midst of drama, in the midst of all of that, your experience is the experience of truth and of love, that spiritual warmth. And then at the end of the day, you can either do it right when you get home from work, depending on what your family situation is like, or you can do it at night right before you go to sleep. Either way. But literally visualize yourself taking it off. In a shower, in meditation. Take it off. And then spend another moment reconnecting with the truth of who you are. And let that be, it's literally, I've just added a total of 5 minutes to your day. You know, call it 2.5, 3 minutes in the morning and the same in the evening. And of course you can expand it, which is even more beautiful. Add a beautiful meditation before, add a beautiful meditation afterwards in the evening. But nobody should say, I don't have time. Bare minimum, 5 minutes, that's it. Okay? And even as I said, you can do it in the shower if you have to. So no excuses. And I think you'll find that it'll really change how you feel when you're moving through the world. Beautiful. Does anyone else have a question? Yes, last question.
My question is, there are so many roles that we play every day, so many characters that we all have at a single point in time. How do you know which is your true character, which is the true you?
Beautiful. Well, the true you is none of those characters. Because the true you is unchanging. And as you say, we play so many roles. And we do, even just in the course of one day. We play the role, in many of our cases, as the child to our parents. Maybe a husband or a wife, a friend, maybe a mother or a father to our children. And that's before we've even left the house. Then we play our role in our job. Maybe we're the employee to the boss, but maybe we're the supervisor to someone below us. We're the colleague to someone else. Someone else's competitor. So many roles we play. Then we go out with friends for a cup of tea or coffee. Play a different role. One day. But the true you isn't any of them. They're all just different roles. And by the way, that doesn't mean they're bad or wrong. They're beautiful. We're supposed to be playing them. And we're supposed to be playing them fully and even enjoying them. Doesn't mean what we have to do is always enjoyable, ask Arjun. But we play these roles. And yeah, as much as possible, enjoy them. Why not? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful creation. Like we've got these 5 senses. Okay, we're not the senses. We're not the body. I'm not my eyes or ears or nose or hands or tongue. But does that mean that we shouldn't enjoy a nice, sweet, hot cup of tea? Or some beautiful music? Or hugging someone we love? Or seeing a sunset? Of course we should. So we've been given these senses to interact with the world and to enjoy as much as we can. The problem comes when we start to think we are them, that we are that perception. And then we get angry, we get greedy, we get lustful, we get jealous, because we've over-identified with that which we're bringing in through our sensation into our perception. And we get caught in the ignorance of thinking that that which I'm enjoying is real and this is me. Who you are isn't the 5 senses, isn't the body, isn't the roles, isn't the characters. But in this human existence, in this human incarnation, they're all different ways of us enjoying our incarnation and purifying that mind. The core of who you are is pure and perfect, divine, God in fact. But the mind that doesn't know that, that's what gets purified through our sadhana, through our meditation, through our prayers, through our seva, through all of what we do. And so we play the roles, play them with love, play them with sincerity, play them to the best we're able. But we realize it's not me. For example, say you have a job, you're a doctor. Well, tomorrow someone sues you for malpractice, you get fired. Or you retire. Okay, you've lost your job, but you haven't lost yourself, which means that you weren't the job. We have a relationship, we identify. Someone's husband, someone's wife, someone's son or daughter, mother, father. And then we lose that person, whether through divorce, whether through death. But we don't cease to exist. So that's how we slowly begin to realize, well, I wasn't those roles. I wasn't those characters I was playing. Because see, that role is over. But I'm still here. So, yeah, you play a lot. But that's where this wetsuit, for me, as a visual person, is such a powerful ritual. Because when I take it off, and by the way, yeah, that wetsuit may be lots of roles. It's not only one role. It's all the roles you play. But when you take it off, then it's just you. And you start to really be able to experientially feel, maybe you were carrying something from the day, some remnant of some interaction that happened, some piece of drama in your drama. You take it off and it feels so free to just be free of the drama. free of the role, free of the box, because our characters put us in boxes. Whether it's a role in the job or a role in a relationship, even the best relationships, we're still frequently in boxes of sort of what's expected of us as our role. You're not acting like you today, right? There's an expectation. What's happened to you? There's an expectation. You are supposed to be like this. And to be able to just is a really beautiful experience. And it helps you stay very anchored and calm when there's struggles in the roles and in the character and in the drama. Because you remember, I am not that. I'm the one wearing the wetsuit. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, everyone, and beautiful night, a beautiful morning and day to our family abroad. And so much love to you all, and I look so forward to being together with you all tomorrow.